who is actually killing our farmers. I don't know if the way that I framed the whole conversation around the white genocide is entirely correct. But these are some of the issues that really jump at me.
When it comes to the white genocide narrative, it ties into a great replacement theory, and it ties so neatly into it that they have taken people for fools. This is all about money, and this whole thing is happening with people in the background.
Regardless of the politics that one might have, the reality is that people are dying. Hello and welcome to yet another program, another episode of Unfiltered with Aubrey Masango. And today I speak to somebody who needs no introduction, somebody that has been quite vocal about social justice on almost every platform you can imagine. And she has developed a voice for unwavering justice and fairness in the various issues that she tackles. I'm talking here about Bianca van Wyk, and I believe that she is the Minister of Diversity on Black Twitter, by the way. So I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit about that. But today we need to ask the question, who exactly is killing our farmers? Not only are these people who are family members, loved ones, mothers, fathers, sisters, but they are also a very significant part of our economy, our agri-economy. So it behooves us to ask real questions about who exactly is killing our farmers. And I'm hoping that Bianca is going to help me wade through that conversation in the incisive way that she does most of the things that she researches and talks about. Bianca, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, Aubrey.
I don't know if the way that I framed the whole conversation around the white genocide is entirely correct. But these are some of the issues that really jump at me. Regardless of the politics that one might have in that space, the reality is that people are dying. The reality is that people are being killed. I've had the displeasure of watching some of the footage of how brutal some of the killings have been. And so one sympathizes, I suppose, with the fact that people are screaming out. But I find that the whole conversation about farm murders, white genocide, that has now sort of morphed into a big international conversation courtesy of Donald Trump, does not ask some fundamental questions. And it sometimes just feels like it's a bomb that's put out into the general conversation, and we all then make up all sorts of conclusions about it. Nobody says who is actually killing our farmers. We all assume we understand who that is. Mm-hmm. And that concerns me. Tell me about your thoughts about the white genocide narrative. Where does it come from? And why has it been sustained for such a long time if it is entirely untrue?
Okay, so when it comes to the white genocide narrative, it ties internationally into a conspiracy theory, okay, which is the great replacement theory. And it ties so neatly into it that it doesn't require facts. And that is around, it's not necessarily false, is the declining birth rates amongst white people. And this is now tied to a theory that you are being replaced by black and brown people, okay? And this whole thing is happening with people in the background, elites, that are encouraging this. That's why they allow, and this is a European theory. I think the man that came up with it was possibly French. So it's got a very long history. And then it tied neatly into what was happening in South Africa around the narrative of farm murders or farm attacks.
Except with the farm attacks narrative, it wasn't replacement, it was obliteration, it was killing.
Yes.
Right.
But it is your red flag of, you see, we are being replaced.
Right. Okay.
So that fits neatly into that great replacement theory. And it has been pushed forward that way. That's why, for instance, when the victim happens to be white and a perpetrator happens to be black in a murder that takes place on a farm and a smallholding, you will see that there is much more media coverage of it. There is background on the victim, and because it feeds into a certain narrative. Okay. Because look, there is these, we're being targeted because we're white, we're getting replaced. And that fits in neatly, and it is pushed by people like, let's say, Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has repeatedly said, with Aaron Struts across him, now Aaron Struts used to be at AfriForum.
Yes.
And then at the Solidarity
He's supposed
movement.
to be an ideologue within the the AfriForum sort of space.
Well, he was the 2IC under Kali Kriel at AfriForum for years, but he started off as the national chair of AfriForum Youth. Then he became, he went up the ranks, and then he moved to the Solidarity movement very briefly. I'm not sure what happened there. And then he started his own little organization called Lex Libertas that he runs now. And he, as I say, Aaron's roots has sat across Tucker Carlson, where Tucker Carlson has said there's white genocide. Tucker Carlson is a great believer in the great replacement theory. And those two fit in
Tucker
very well.
Tucker Carlson is obviously the American talk show host, right?
Yes.
He is a very, very popular amongst the right-wing Americans, I believe, yeah?
Yes.
A MAGA type guy?
He's more America first, and there's a little bit of a difference.
Right.
But he used to be very pro-Trump. I think he is still pro-Trump, except on certain issues, and he's a bit more outspoken since he left Fox News, so
right.
he is critical. So he has those moments where you think, what, who broke you?
Yes.
But then he reverts back to the, great replacement theory, and you realize, you're still the same guy.
Right.
Yes.
So there is this international overarching narrative that says that white folks are being systematically done away with by black and brown people. Replaced, okay? But then the South African sort of take on that international idea is that not only are we being replaced, we are being literally wiped out. And again, let me say that it's, when I say South African, I'm talking about South African amongst that particular group of people, because it's not a majority white sort of understanding.
No,
I'm correct, right?
You're correct.
Okay, yeah,
you're correct. And sadly, what this entire discussion does, when you put the genocide in there, is that it actually destroys the discussion we should be having around rural safety. Criticisms of things like, yes, we have a national rural safety strategy. Is it working? What are we doing? How are the communities working together? And because of that genocide label. So I can understand the frustration when, let's say, you are passionate about rural safety and you see certain things happening. Remember that farmers are soft targets.
Sure.
Rural communities are soft targets.
Right.
The figures we see provided by AfriForum, when you see a number that says 49 farm murders, that 49 aren't farmers. That includes farmers, workers, residents, visitors on farms, because they use the same definition as SAPS uses when it comes to farmer tax. So that number is not 49 farmers, it is 49 people either on a farm or a small holding,
Right.
which is included in the definition.
Right.
Those are not commercial farmers either. And that breaks down the other argument, because there is the argument, but there's only 34,000, I think, commercial farmers. The number varies. Sometimes you get 32,000, sometimes 34, and sometimes a bit higher. But you're not reporting on commercial farmers. You are reporting on people that die on small holdings, farm workers. And so there's holes in that. And the problem is you can't have a productive discussion, because then it reverts to, so you don't care about the brutal murder or the brutal torture or, that took place during, and that's not the discussion.
Or you are exceptionalizing white deaths.
Yes.
And so it becomes a polarized fight.
Exactly.
That invariably becomes racial in its character, right?
Exactly.
I want you to go back a little bit to the definition of a farm murder that both AfriForum and the SAPS uses.
Yes.
There's something is problematic about that, and I can't locate it.
Okay, so the definition, and that is the issue, is when I listen to someone break down, and I consume right-wing media and more left, independent media, and then also mainstream, is if someone doesn't provide you with a definition in front and all you hear is there has been 420 farm attacks, what do you think you're hearing?
I immediately think that it's 420 white people that have been killed by black people.
Yes. But what actions do you think happened? If I say there have been so you think people have been killed. There's 420. And that is the problem. The definition should be provided up front. If we want to be credible, we should provide the definition up front. And a farm attack is a violent crime that took place on a small holding or a farm. That's part of the definition.
So every time we hear farm attack and assume that it is actually a farm murder, that might not necessarily be the case.
No, and it's not the case. Because if you look at it, there was the recent report, it was a little communique sent out by AfriForum that indicated there were 3 farm attacks from the 30th of January to the 8th of February.
2026?
Yes. Okay. When you hear that, you think 3 murders. All right. On the 30th of January, there was actually a murder on a farm in KwaZulu-Natal. And then I think there are 2 on the 3rd, which were farm attacks where it was robberies, but also where, there was injuries. They took place on a farm. They are farm attacks. But when people hear that, they assume, okay, well, that's 3 white farmers. The farm murder on the 30th of January was 52-year-old Mr. Singh, an Indian man. And it was horrific. It was brutal. There was a robbery involved. And I think his elderly uncle also got harmed during that process. But immediately after that little post went out, there's no race indicated by AfriForum, but the people that are pushing the white genocide or only white farmers immediately took that and said the genocide continues. Of who? Indian people now?
Will they not say, but that is precisely what we've been saying, and it is you, the left-wing media, that has racialized it in that way. We are actually making a clarion call to the world to see that there is a disproportionately violent culture of violence against people in the rural areas.
But are they? Because the issue is, is it disproportionate? Because the figures don't tell. In fact, if you look at research done by the Institute of, is it Security Studies?
Yes.
Yes. I think that is Professor Johan Berger.
Yes. It's no longer there, I believe. No.
Okay.
Yep.
Or you look, for instance, at work done by Professor Rudolf Zinn, a 5-year study on farm attacks. Okay. And the conclusion that you can draw from that is that it is safer for you to stay on a farm or a small holding than it is staying in an urban area or in a township. And that is the problem. It's difficult to have these nuanced conversations because we should be listening to people that care about rural safety. I'm one of the people that come from a family who had a farm in Limpopo. My grandfather survived a farm attack and between Mokopong and Mokopane. And so, yes, these things happen on farms, but they do not only affect a farmer, and they don't only affect a farmer because he's white.
Who is responsible, Bianca, for the stereotyping? Okay, because here I am. I'm a media practitioner. I should be relatively well informed about this. Mm-hmm. But as you've just demonstrated now, that when I hear that there have been 400 and whatever farm attacks, my immediate thinking, black media practitioner who operates in the current affairs space, I immediately think that it is white people that have been killed by black people. First of all, I want to hear your thoughts about who is responsible for the stereotyping, this immediate trope that we accept, that somehow gives oxygen to the untruths and the lies. Is it a lie by commission or a lie by omission? Why is it that we are so ready as a society to accept that when we hear 450 farm attacks, we automatically assume without question that it means 450 white people killed by black people?
Okay, it is definitely by commission. And here's the thing, it didn't start after 1994.
Sure.
This is a narrative that was pushed during apartheid. You must remember what happened is that the freedom fighters at that stage used to go over the borders. So what was done by the South African Defence Force?
Yes.
Yes. During that time is they placed commandos on the farms at the borders. So where do you think the place of attack was? It was the farms. Who were the attackers in that case?
It would have been people that crossing over into other countries.
And coming back.
Right.
And I can't off the top of my head think now, but at that stage, I think it was in the 70s already, there was this thing about, look how they are killing our farmers. They are killing our farmers. Okay. So, and you must remember it was conflict at that stage. And yes, there were white farmers killed at that stage. They were the ones owning the farms along the borders.
And it was during a moment of real conflict.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So the narrative has been there all the time. It just needed someone to, dust it off and have the money to put in it and frame it in a certain way. And we've just continued with it.
So you're saying to me that the narrative of they are killing us, yes, or they are killing our farmers is one that has been taken from a particular era and superimposed for this era.
Yes.
And I imagine it would have worked for finding the resources and finances for the commandos to be deployed at those farms during those times.
Yes.
Which is really the call right now for the farm space to be given special, I suppose, status
Yes.
in terms of the crimes that happen there, so that commando-like security forces are placed there. So that's the core.
That's where it started.
Okay.
Then you had this theory that we've spoken about, the Great Replacement Theory, and you have certain people that come from that era. And a lot of people don't realize, I am not surprised when I see certain takes from, for instance, let's say Dr. Corné Mulder. I'm like, nah, he's his father's son. And I just move on because they are disciplined about staying true to what they believed. And a lot of the people that head up these organizations, do yourself a favor and start looking at their backgrounds, and you'll realize they have just stayed with exactly the same viewpoints, varnished a little because there's certain things you cannot say and cannot do.
They've simply New South Africanized them.
Yes, okay. Put a little bit of shine on it, that it doesn't come across as harsh or anything like that. And they head up these organizations that have got vast resources. I mean, Solidarity Movement, for instance, got 1.2 billion rand budget for this year. And you look at it and you think, oh, okay, wow.
Where's this money coming from?
Donations. Donations. That has always been the issue, is that you get from donations, and that's why there's such a pushback around. There's a bill that I saw a little while that they're trying to work on about transparency on funding of these NPOs and NGOs, and there's a big pushback against it because I don't know, I can't think that it's only donations that is going into those those very fancy trips and offices and booking your whole cinemas. But also they've got a huge network when it comes to independent media. And they've got a certain market. And it works for them.
It is true that we need to be asking deeper questions about. So there have been 450 farm attacks. First of all, what does farm attacks mean? Secondly, why is it do we readily accept in our own minds that it means 400 white people have been killed by black people? And the fact that we all seem to participate in that. I'm interested to hear your thoughts about that collective psychology of a conspiracy to almost work together to make a lie live.
Programming, I think. And also it takes, I also want to say, is we, as individuals, things that are quick and easy to understand, we grab on it. Things that actually would be boring, like reading an entire thesis by Professor Zinn, for instance, who's done 5 years research. It's not exciting. And it's a lot of work. So I think it's what's easy to understand. And that, because we're lazy, we have got to a stage where we don't ask questions. We're also afraid of the backlash when we do ask questions, and the emotional blackmail if you do ask questions. So I think that is the issue, because if we just start with understanding the definition, it's a violent crime. It could be damage to property. It's a farm attack. So if I come onto your farm and I damage your gate, it's a farm attack. That's part of the 420. If I come and steal your property, it's a farm attack. If I murder you, if I rape you, if I assault you, it's a farm attack. And those are all farm attacks. So when you hear 420 farm attacks, that's what you're hearing about. It's 420 crimes.
I get the issue of definition and the fact that the farm attack definition is an overarching meta definition of what happens in the rural spaces. Not too long ago, there was a black farmer who was killed. And the report that came from some of the people that want to scream farm attacks, first of all, didn't say farm murder. It said rural murder. And there was a whole conversation on social media spaces to say, so when a white farmer is killed, that is called a farm murder. And when a black farmer is killed, it's called a rural murder. First of all, I want to ask, is that a fair criticism against those who speak that way? And even with the famous Oval Office meeting with President Ramaphosa and the American delegation under President Donald Trump, the picture of all of those crosses that we saw, right? And I'm not talking about the mountain in just outside Mudimula. I'm talking about the crosses that we saw in that were shown in the video by the Americans in the Oval Office.
Yes.
I'm told that those crosses did not signify or were not symbolic of each and every farm murder that took place, even though that's the narrative that was given to the Americans and what they were saying, right? It was simply a symbolic situation of crosses that symbolized people that had been murdered on the farms, black and white, I'm told, right? But it has been easily hijacked to mean psychologically white farmers that were killed, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the narrative that later becomes white genocide, are you suggesting that even people that have been attacked on farms, that have been killed on farms, who happen not to be white, are part of the data that is used to push the white genocide narrative?
Yes, it's always been that way. And you can't actually, as I say, you can't have a productive conversation about it, because that is the part of that particular discussion that people, I would say, on both sides, because what has happened, let's also be honest here, there are horrific crimes on certain farms and smallholdings. And if I, for instance, do a little, let's say, a post on X about a white farmer that has been murdered or tortured, during a robbery or whatever, I know for a fact, because of the way it's been handled by people that pretend to care about rural safety and farmers, I am going to get backlash on that from people that normally agree with me on other things.
Right.
Because they have been harmed by this narrative. I have technically, well, not me, but you've got this group of people that have painted all black people as savages, violence, because that's what the narrative needed. And they needed this evil, swart gevaar, black menace, and that's the way the narrative has been pushed. So I understand that the backlash is going to be a certain way. So me trying to have a discussion around Piet that went through this terrible thing but Piet is with a number of other people who also, for instance, in a number of these farm attacks, people that have died is farm workers. You don't know their names. You don't know if they had families. You don't know how long they lived on the farm or anything like that. They are totally excluded, but they are in the numbers. If you, for instance, at a stage, I think in 2023, people must go and look at AfriForum's report on farm attacks and farm murders. And you will see in that report, they used to provide the professions or, who these people were. Were they a farm manager? Were they a farmer? Were they a farm worker? You used to see that. They've removed it from their reports now. You don't see that anymore.
Is there a discrimination even in the national definition of farm attacks and farm murders?
Discriminate, I'd need to understand.
In other words, does the official police services definition say that we are now talking about farm attacks, not murders? Or is it all mashed up together?
When the police actually talk, they don't talk about farm murders, okay? It's murders that took place on a farm or a small holding. Whereas the terminology has allowed people to push the narrative.
Right.
The same with farm attacks. And we're never going to adjust that because do you get city attacks?
Township
attacks? No, we get farm attacks. And that includes small holdings, and it does not include only commercial farms. Why are we, because that's always the argument, is that, there's only so many commercial farmers. Okay, then show us the figures for commercial farmers so we can see where the problem is. Commercial farmers have money for security. Okay. Commercial farmers that are that are successful commercial farmers, they know how they rely on the communities. The communities look after them, they look after their communities. That's how commercial farming works. A lot of these attacks are not commercial farmers. So you're having your bread buttered on both sides here. So you are telling us there's so few commercial farmers. You're also telling us that Afrikaners are farmers, so we're leaving the English farmers out, but you're using those numbers, okay? And you also, we're talking about white farmers now. There is a smaller percentage of black commercial farmers, so we can put them in there too. But their numbers are sold as these are white Afrikaners that got murdered. We're putting everything together. You're even putting farm workers in the story. So your numbers include all of those people. They're not all commercial farmers, but they include all. You could be a subsistence farmer. If you get attacked on your farm, it's a farm attack.
There have been a lot of walking back on the idea that there is a white genocide by certain organizations that patently have been the originators of that particular narrative in this country. And it has been quite startling to see that AfriForum, for example, has been very clear to say that we've never said that there's a white genocide in this country. Meetings with Minister Gayton McKenzie, where they've come out to say, no, we've never said that there's a white genocide in this country, at least not in the Rwanda sort of sense. Could that be part of the reason why there is this walking back? Because people are actually starting to ask questions about what exactly does this white genocide mean? And who exactly is in the definition? And our conversation up until now shows that there is a taking advantage of certain ideas that come from the past that have created a momentum with this juggernaut of easy understandings that are often not true, that serve that narrative of the white genocide. And as you've said, behind that is the whole replacement theory sort of motivation. The question then becomes, is there no compassion for the fact that people are dying? farmers are dying, and therefore we can't play these kinds of politics, that we should actually be having the substantive conversation about rural safety that encompasses everybody that is in our rural spaces. What do you think is behind the sustenance of maybe not the white genocide, but the picking on white farmers narrative?
When you say picking on white farmers, or you mean the focus on them?
Well, the narrative more recently has been that no, there's no white genocide, but white farmers are disproportionately targeted. Why is that? Surely the conversation should be, how do we create a situation where everybody in that space feels safe? Both the white farmers, their workers, black farmers, and any other color farmer. Why is it that that conversation seems to be sustained?
Okay, you see, off the top of my head, and it's probably not going to be a very popular take, is that the moment that changes, a cash cow dies. Because you must remember, I have to be really committed to that particular narrative. And also, if I remain committed, I will continue giving donations, and it is a cash cow. It has been a cash. You have a number of what we call white farm murder grifters that have made money by saying that their money is going to go to farm murder victims. You had people that say they, for instance, are going to walk against white genocide in the United States, and sadly they have taken people for fools.
There's a guy with the name of Jason Bartlett that I see on social media that has been accused of that by American donors, right?
By South African donors too.
Wow.
They were giving him money. And then Trump went out of office, he disappeared, Jason Bartlett disappeared, and then he stuck his head up again. And this is not a man that was a farmer or anything like that. He's someone that was actually a illegal person in the United States because he got there on a cruise ship, him and his girlfriend. So yes, you know, the moment you take that particular thing away.
He was of the first group of white refugees in America?
No, he was there years ago. I think wasn't it around 2018 already? So when was Trump? Trump was 2016, right?
Yes.
He went there with his girlfriend on a cruise ship. They got off and they stayed. And then they connected to certain people that were pushing the Republican, at that stage, Trump, remember, also made the statements about white farmers being murdered. And then there was a big issue because President Ramaphosa at that stage said that there's no such thing. And, it was like, it's still something that's repeated today. But yeah. So he made money out of it. There are so many people that make money out of this particular narrative. And also it keeps a group tied together. The moment you start introducing facts and say, you know what, let's talk about the national rural safety strategy. Let's see how we can fix that. Then it's, there's no conversation. So are these people that really worry about rural safety? Does that say you're really concerned about rural safety? And like I say, no one can say that people in rural areas are not soft targets.
Absolutely.
They are kilometers away from police stations. Also, another thing is when a crime is committed on a farm, in a lot of cases, police can't get into that farm. There's a story about, for instance, Klaas Jabonto a few years ago. He was tortured for days on a farm, by three 3 or 4 people. And the police, when they got there, they couldn't get onto the premises. The 2 men that were burnt in barrels, not last year, the year before, 2024. What was it last year? I don't know, it will come back to me. And they were then, their remains were found near Middelburg in a car, in plastic bags.
I seem to also remember not too long ago, about 4 or 5 months ago, an elderly gentleman was having an altercation with some journalists and I think some activists from the EFF. And he simply said that, yeah, he's killed people on his farms.
There's a court case going on now about a man that was beaten for hours during a braai, by the way. The security manager arrived there on a farm. Security manager arrived there and saw what they were doing and said, stop it, and left. And then later that night, they phoned the same security manager and said, oh, guy's dead now. And the security manager said, I don't want to know about this. It's ongoing now. The court case is ongoing now. It's 3 guys. And the only reason we know about this man was because when they tried to go and hide his body, they were stopped in a stop and go.
And the story, of course, of the 2 women that were fed to the pigs.
Maria and Kudzai.
Yeah, and my thinking is, how many other people have been fed to the pigs
and
successfully?
The only reason we know about Maria and Kudzai is because there was a survivor. Otherwise, we would have never known. Remember that Kudzai's partner, and Kudzai and her partner came from Zimbabwe. Kudzai's partner was also shot. He managed to crawl to the road and he was picked up and taken to the hospital. So he was able to report it. Also, Ranti, I've got contact with Maria's children. So we in contact. I know, keep tabs on them and go and see them every now and then. Okay. So Ranti, who's the oldest of the 4 boys, got a call from the other kids saying, our mom was going to go and fetch yogurts and she hasn't come back. And he then tried to get hold of his uncle and then they knew where they were going to go and get those yogurts on the dumping site. And this young man, he's only 22, had to see his mother's body
in that condition.
But would we have known about Maria and Kudzai if there wasn't a survivor and there weren't kids waiting at home?
How many other Maria and Kudzai incidents have taken place before that were successful?
That we don't know.
We don't know anything about.
And that is the issue, is we cannot have these nuanced conversations with all the noise and all the moneyed noise. And when I say moneyed noise, I'm talking about your podcasters that are hyper-focused on these issues and cherry-pick when it comes to the facts. So you can't have a discussion about rural safety. Rural safety is not the topic. We're talking about a group that feels that they should be, and I'm not saying all farmers feel that way, because there's a lot of farmers that get very irritated with the narrative, because if you speak to farmers, they will tell you that their reliance on the community, the relationships between the community members, is very important for their survival.
No, I remember that quite vividly when a couple was killed in KwaZulu-Natal, and the community, which was largely black people, was visibly distraught about the death of this couple.
Yes.
Because they understood these people to be part of their community. But I also remember that at one of the meetings that the police had with the general community was a gentleman who stood up who said, how come? And he was speaking to the Minister of Police at the time, who was Bheki Cele at the time. He said, how come when a white farmer dies, then we have the Minister of Police coming to the area But on a daily basis, we are reporting people being killed who happen to be black in these areas. We'll never see a minister come. And maybe we need to have that conversation about how the state responds in ways that feel very, very disproportionate, just in terms of the levels of importance that is put on to somebody who dies. And it became a big issue because this guy was at pains to say, I'm not saying that you shouldn't come because we loved these people. We loved these people. We are distraught at their passing. But the question was directed at the minister to say, how come when the white couple dies, you are here, but you've never come in the multiple times where black people have died in these rural areas? To what extent do you think that perhaps that is part of the problem, the politicization of the situation that takes our view away from the crux of the matter, which is rural safety?
Yes. I think that is a problem quite often. And yeah, we can talk about, for instance, what happened to Maria Nkadzai, which was absolutely horrific, got a huge amount of media coverage, not only nationally, but internationally, because of the shock value of that particular story, and politicians got involved in that particular story. Where politicians should be getting involved is that there is a community that I've actually been to that are actually getting food at a dumpster.
Hello?
That's where politicians should get involved.
Yeah.
You know, and I am obviously very grateful because I know the boys' progress, Maria's son's progress. I'm grateful for the support that the state supplies when it comes to social workers, which they do, by the way, and, assisting with grants and things like that. I'm grateful for that. However, there is still a community that will find themselves in the same situation. Maria would have never been on that dump if there was employment, if there was, if you were encouraging small businesses, but that community, it was at risk because they were going there, and there was obviously someone that felt that they should not be going there, was his premises, and this happened.
There is also the question of government is in denial about what is happening in the rural areas. And now the story is out based on the amplification of this narrative by the United States President, Donald Trump, that there is a conspiracy to deny what's happening in the rural areas. What is it that is said to be denied? What is being denied in terms of the narrative?
I'm not sure that anything is being denied. If you have got a national rural safety strategy, how are you denying it? If police stations actually have got a separate process when it comes to farm attacks and collecting the data and stuff like that, and also dealing with it, they've got separate units, I'm not sure that we can say it's denied. Or we can say under-resourced. We could probably look at from that angle. But you must remember the other side of this too, is if I tell you as farmers, government doesn't care about you. So if you want to be safe, you have to use security firms. So there's another track that you've got to keep in mind. And like I say, just last year, was the security does nothing for, unless it's a reputable security company, there's nothing for the actual laborers, workers or residents. It's about the farmer. And I highlight if it's unless it's a reputable company. So there is people making money all the time. So the moment government, for instance, says, listen, we are going to now focus on that. There was a portfolio committee meeting in May last year. What was the topic? Farm attacks, farm murders. It's not a topic that is shifted aside. It actually does take place. So the government is not denying it. Could they do more? I don't know. We have got a very high level of crime. You are saying that there is this, we must be focusing, yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what they can do any differently, except maybe get their act together when it comes to responding.
Part of what has been suggested as to what government can do is arrest that man, right? If you remember in the Oval Office, when the South African delegation was there and the EFF's "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer" chant was beamed onto the wall there. The issue was, why don't you arrest that man, and why don't you condemn the singing of this chant, "Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer," Tubulipun, because it inspires and makes people want to have a bloodlust that kills people in a very uniquely brutal way. And there have been instances, so the narrative goes, that after people have been killed, then there will be inscriptions in blood on the walls that say, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer." So there is a causal link between the song and the brutal murders against white people in the farm space.
So we're talking about the struggle song. And yes, they are trying to link it together. However, the data does not support the argument. But data doesn't matter. It is an emotive thing. People are emotional about it. Personally, my own issue doesn't offend me. Know the history of it. Also, I do realize this is politics. So you push my buttons, I push your buttons. And the moment that song goes away, there'll be another issue. And there is now the hard stances. So you want to take our history away, but you're threatening us. So the causal link, there is no such thing. Okay, there is no causal link if you look at the numbers. All right. And if you can, for instance, take a look from where the man, CIC, Julius Malema, from when he went into office at the EFF, I think 2011. It's 2011 that the EFF was established. Right until now, you look at the numbers, farm murders on farms and small holdings has declined. So is there a causal link? What's happening there?
And by the way, the chant Tuwilipun is older than Julius Malema.
Yes, it is.
I don't know what levels of history goes into. I mean, what levels of research goes into the history of the struggle process by those who hold that white genocide narrative. Chanting and struggle songs are part of the struggle of this country for liberation for centuries.
Yes.
And there are songs that are part of that repertoire that have been there for literally centuries, that were composed by communities in the struggle. So I'm also interested in the psychology behind the blaming of the singing of that song for what is termed white genocide or an overemphasis on killing white people on farms.
Okay, but you need something, and that's a very emotive thing. And seeing, for instance, the Black Menace. Julius Malema happens, I honestly think that AfriForum and the Solidarity Movement should give him commission. Because he's
their oxygen.
He's their oxygen. Because, I mean, careers are built around that man.
Really,
okay? Because without him, everyone else looks like pussycats. They just like
Sure.
They're accommodating, they're having these friendly conversations, and he's got very hard stances. They clip his speeches. That's also something I never understood around my particular crowd, is the thing around what? I'm not calling for the killing of white people yet. And that is the Julius Malema clip. And I looked at this and I thought, look, I want to know when he's calling for it, so I'm going to watch the full speech. Okay? Because, you've got to prepare. Okay? So anyway, so I watched the full speech. And in the same speech, he says, I will never call for that. Saying chasing white people into the sea is stupid. People are naturalized. We go to church together.
We marry each other.
And that part of the clip they never share. Because that is like, oh my goodness, no. That would be the worst part. So I do understand the moment a certain group puts a certain light on people and they focus, it makes me question, and I go and have a look. But again, with the song, and also you mentioned there's only been 3 incidences that they've made reference to this painting on the wall. Okay. So number 1, the incident, I know exactly where this reference is made. They never say who saw it. It's never introduced in the court case. And the guy that they said actually painted this message, kill the boer, on the wall. Actually, where did he come from? He was the gardener. So he is not like a political, he was also a man that before he committed this horrific crime against 2 elderly women, he had stabbed someone else to death with a beer bottle. He had committed the crime against these 2 women also with a bottle. So he was a serial murderer, and you want to tell me he made a political statement? This just doesn't make sense. Then the next time you hear it is there's a guy called Willem Petzer. I believe he's currently out on bail because he couldn't behave at a protest. But he, for instance, said his uncle, they wrote white devil on the wall, in his blood. And I was like, I know the story.
It doesn't sound right.
It just doesn't sound right. So I go and have a look. They wrote 666 devil. And this guy, the perpetrator in that particular murder, also a horrific crime, said he was a Satanist. But he didn't write. But you see, without me telling you the story, you will hear the white devil.
Yeah.
Is it true? No. But it wouldn't have been as powerful if I said he wrote 666 devil and he said he was a Satanist. That kind of thing. So we need to, but we can't have those discussions. And because all we are doing is there's nothing in the middle. We've got, only white farmers are getting attacked. And then we've got, you have actually said that I'm a savage and violent just because I'm black. And you don't care about black people on farms and rural areas. There's nothing in the middle saying, you know what, let's discuss rural safety for everyone.
That's a dearth of leadership, though.
Yes.
I mean, that is just a dearth of leadership all around.
Absolutely. No, I agree there.
Another thing that I've seen in some of the research that you're doing is the identification of intra-family murders on farms. Again, I want to say that there is this big narrative that has been sustained very, very well through, as you said, media campaigns and protests and all sorts of things. And it feeds into a larger replacement theory narrative and all of that. But there seems to be something else going on here that we don't hear talked about often in the rural South Africa space, and that is intra-family murders that are quite alarming.
It is alarming, but the argument could be that there are not that many, really. But they're very violent, but they don't feed into the narrative. They simply don't feed into the narrative. And I don't think there's enough research on that particular issue. Yes, it does happen, but it just quietly goes away. There's a big splash and then it quietly goes away. For instance, the one guy is the Minister of Correctional Services is Piet Groenewald, right? He is now he has sent back the parole agreement back to the parole board to review it. This guy was 15, murdered his parents and his sister, and he is 29 now, and he's spent 12 years in jail, and he was up for parole, and the parole board said yes. However, after doing this, he knew at 15 to drive to the police station and say he was attacked. It was a farm attack. And
by black
killed my
folks.
family. Yes. Well,
Now,
he doesn't. You don't have to qualify it.
You don't even have to say it.
If you don't have to qualify it.
Yeah.
No, at all.
I mean, I remember with the murder of Riva Steenkamp,
Mm-hmm.
that it didn't even have to be said that it would be the home invasion, I think it was called at that time. That was sort of suggested. Nobody said it, but for a little while, the narrative was that this is a possible home invasion. And I remember sitting in the studio and thinking, that narrative has so successfully and snugly fitted into a broader narrative globally. And what scared me, Bianca, was that the insinuation was that the person who had murdered Riva Steenkamp is somebody that looks like me.
Yes.
Right? So it wasn't said,
No.
but the insinuation and the implication was that it would have been a black home invader. The other story that a similar sort of epiphany hit me was the story of Henry van Breda. I mean, he has a beautiful family, and suddenly they are obliterated in the most brutal way. And the question was, how could they do this? And I found myself saying to myself, geez, this they feels like the eyes are looking at somebody who looks like me. I don't know if you understand what that must feel like, that the automatic insinuation and therefore accusation that is hidden behind this politeness that we are not going to say who it is, but we all know who it is. And yes. I'm that guy, It really, really is a very scary thing. It's a very, very scary. And again, I ask the question, why are we all so ready to accept that? Why are we all so ready to be a part of that kind of conversation when it is just a trope?
Programming. That's it. It is programming. If you look at the makeup of South Africa, okay, it is statistically, and it makes rational sense, that if you are in a township and you experience crime, it is not going to be someone that looks like me. Okay. It right. is. And so the programming, our experience and programming, okay, it's like the argument they'll say, look at who the jails are full of. And it would be weird if 90% of the population of the jail would be white people. But if you go, for instance, to Sweden and you look at the population of the jail, you're going to see that it doesn't represent the same.
I remember Charlie Kirk was a big proponent of the argument that says that black people are fundamentally violent and deviant. And he would use all sorts of statistics to show that the overwhelming majority of people that are in American jails are black men, even though they are part of a very small minority. And so what is the conclusion? What is the natural conclusion there? So that whole kind of mentality has been pushed by those kinds of arguments that don't have contextualization. We were talking at another conversation about the need for context. We need context all the time. Otherwise, that's how disinformation breathes. There's another story that is doing the rounds in the context of South Africa's conversation about immigration.
Yes.
And suggestions have been made that part of what happens is that when people cross our borders into South Africa from other parts of the SADC region in search for work, they will find work in farms along that space, along the borders of this country. And they are employed. And then they are exploited, sometimes not paid, on the basis that these guys are here illegally. And so what can you do?
No, it does happen. Okay, so first of all, the exploitation is definitely an issue, yeah. You must remember that if you are illegally in a country, you cannot demand that people actually apply the laws of that country when it comes to labor laws. So there is the exploitation.
And we see that kind of exploitation not only in the rural spaces, we see it in businesses in urban areas, hotels, restaurants, homes, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Across the color line.
Oh, yes. Yes. No, that is absolutely true. So you cannot demand that you are treated fairly according to the laws. You can, but then they can just say, I'll phone someone to remove you from this country. The second thing is that with that exploitation does come a certain amount of animosity, and there are incidences. And when you look at Professor Zinn's work, you will see that a lot of these syndicates are made up of mixed groups. So it's South Africans and foreign nationals that are incarcerated for these crimes. The motive is, again, not an issue around race. It's around the thinking that farmers are rich, for instance. And so
and they have resources.
And they're
isolated. They're far from help.
Yeah. Yes, it's not like you are going to have the police or the next door neighbors hearing what happens in a farmhouse. Then when it comes to, again, going back to Professor Zinn's work, when it comes to torture, most of those torturing or even threats, for instance, what was his name? Malefu, or I don't know, it's a meme that is used about, this guy that said, I said I'll put his child in the oven.
Malevin.
Yeah.
Yes,
Malevin.
Yeah.
Is that the threats and also the actual torture is to get, for instance, PIN codes, it's to get access to safes. Specifically, they are interested in weapons because that then gets sold on to be used in other crimes. These are repeat offenders. That there's
criminal syndicates that have made a career out of that particular sector.
Yes, and they do it from young. That is also the sad thing, but it's also a conversation that we'll never have is around, okay, so what do we do about the social issues around ensuring that this doesn't happen going forward? And how can we focus on fixing the structural issues? But yes, so they will then use torture in a lot of, not in a lot, again, that's another false narrative, is that torture occurs in every farm attack. That is not true. Or in every farm murder. That is not true. In fact, the stats around that, it is more likely that you will experience torture in an urban robbery than you will in which is odd, But there is real violence. And yes, there are foreign nationals involved. The syndicates also include South Africans, and they work together.
I've come to understand that people anywhere in the world that are involved in criminality are not stuck on these little divisions that we tend to entertain.
No.
They all speak green and they speak it fluently.
Exactly.
We started the conversation with me asking, how come the white genocide narrative has been so well sustained, especially during the Trumpian years, both in the first instance of his presidency in the United States, and now in the second term. To what extent does Trump and his politics, or his brand of politics, sustain that conversation? I've argued when people came to me to say that, but it's not AfriForum that is saying white genocide. It is President Trump that has been saying white genocide and the persecution of specifically Afrikaners. Why would a Trump be a mouthpiece for what organizations in South Africa, such as AfriForum and Solidarity, who've said that, no, we didn't say white genocide? Why would Trump be saying that? Why would he be stubbornly continuing with that narrative? And where does he get it from?
When it comes to Trump, the individual, he's got a history of being a white supremacist. It's not exactly he took out an entire ad to have 5 black youths hung, when he was still young.
I remember that New York
involved in and they weren't they weren't the perpetrators.
Yeah.
He took out that ad. He's always been that way. So you can understand how the Great Replacement theory feeds into his thinking. You can understand how racism feels. So it's not surprising that this particular part of it doesn't appeal to him. But if you actually, has he ever been in South Africa?
No.
No.
He's been invited a couple of times during the G20 moment last year to say, come and see for yourself.
Yes. But he wasn't interested. So it just fits into the narrative. I mean, so it's not like he's a mouthpiece. He's just speaking to what he knows. If you look, for instance, at the roadmap for the USA, which is Project 2025, I mean, that's all along the same way. If you look at the conservative think tanks that are inviting our more conservative crowd to the United States, where they get to tell people about farm murders and get to tell people about cultural genocide. Okay.
What does that mean?
That you're removing the culture, that you people. Not
the darkies.
Me. Not me. Okay.
Maar Afrikaans is groot.
Very well done. My Afrikaans is ook goed.
Now, what I'm trying to say is that, I mean, I watch the most beautiful concerts. I watch the most erudite debates in Afrikaans on Cakenet or whatever the case may be. And what I'm seeing also is that Afrikaans has evolved to be very mainstream. In other words, it's no longer just white Afrikaans.
Yes.
It's black Afrikaans, or what you would call colored folks.
Yes.
And the infusion of the colored culture into the Afrikaans language. In fact, it should be the other way around. But the infusion of the colored culture into Afrikaans, making Afrikaans rich. So where does the idea that there is a cultural genocide come from?
Maybe that is the problem. Okay, you must remember Afrikaans is beautiful, kind of rich, and if you look at the history of Afrikaans before it was
White.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it.
I'll tell you, can I quickly tell you a quick story?
Sure.
My Afrikaans teacher was a gentleman by the name of Mr. Preller. Turns out that he was the great-grandson of Gustav Preller, who was a very well-known literary luminary in the Afrikaans culture, wrote a number of books, and he told me that actually, if we really look at the history of Afrikaans, it was not the white man's language. It was the language that was spawned by people that had been enslaved, people of the Khoi and the San sort of background. Again, I always tend to worry about those terms, Khoi, San, because they come from a particular space. Some might say that you should actually say Kam and the Kwe.
Yes.
And really the introduction of those creolized dialects that wanted to be able to speak to the boss who was speaking Dutch at the time. So he explained to me that the true origins of Afrikaans are that. Later, it becomes standardized as a result of political will, I suppose, by the Nats and so forth and so forth. And so when you go into that history, you wonder, what do you mean that there is a cultural genocide when the very language that you claim to be yours isn't yours in the first place, but also the language that has now become Afrikaans is rich, beautifully rich, just in terms of its ability to lend itself to other languages. My language, my indigenous language, is isiNdebele of South Africa. So, you've got the isiNdebele of Zimbabwe, and then there is the isiNdebele of South Africa. My language borrows a lot of terminologies and turns of phrase from Afrikaans. We say ukubereka, which comes from the word werk, meaning to work, right? Anyway, the point I'm trying to say is that Afrikaans is so rich, so accommodative, so embracive. How does one talk about a genocide of Afrikaans?
Culturally. Okay, so cultural genocide is, what I'm understanding, is a push against assimilation. Ons self.
Okay.
So, just like Afrikaans was taken and it was structured to be a more formal language to exclude people.
Standaard Afrikaans.
Yeah, exactly. Then so is a lot of things. Now you are saying, what you've done now is saying what you said will get a visceral reaction from people saying, no, but we want to stick to the fact that that Afrikaans comes from Dutch, French, it's Eurocentric. The sharing of stuff, anything sharing is seen as an attack. And I think I can blame it on the British.
But isn't that already a misnomer? The very name of that language is Afrikaans, of Africa.
Which brings us to the other thing.
Right.
Okay. Remember, Afrikaners. So we of Africa.
Yeah.
And that is something that I brought up recently with the Graaf Renet debacle.
Yes.
Okay. right. So there is now the
Robert Sobukwe Town
the
versus
discussion.
Graaf-Reinet, yes.
Graaf-Reinet. And people that are vehemently against it, the change. Now, there are people that are against it for different reasons. There's, no, but why don't they spend money on other things? Which is not a very good argument because the budget is at Department of Sport, Art and Culture. It is not at infrastructure or at public works or anything. That's where that budget is. So no, they do not build houses or roads or anything like that. You can criticize them on other projects in that area. So that argument is not great. But then it is the issue of you taking our history. All right. But here's your problem. You chose a name that wants to show that you're indigenous, which you're not, but you want to show that's why you call yourself an Afrikaner. This is where we started, okay? In 1707 already, you separated yourself.
Vrije burgers.
Exactly. You indicated, you yourself said that you are a distinct group from other Europeans. The history of Graaf-Reinet is Dutch. And it's from the same company that you said exploited you and that you don't like.
Oh, my word.
And now you are saying it's yours. It's your... The town is named after a Dutch governor from the VOC who...
Yeah, but I can imagine that they will argue that as negative as that history might be, to the indigenous Afrikaner identity, it is still our history.
But how is it your history? You were distinct from them. You see, that is it's the same as when we have a discussion about the Boere war, okay, oorlog, okay, is that, you know, there's this big focus of what the British, because there's still an issue between the British. And,
yes, I see, yeah.
Yeah. I often get into, attacked on that one, you know, but you can see you from British descent.
He's a joiner.
I wasn't, not a joiner, British descent.
Okay.
If they say, you know,
A friend of mine told me about the whole story of the
the
joiners.
joiners are amongst them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the part of the conversation that is not had is the fact that the British gave them reparations. But when there's a discussion around reparations for anyone else, then it's, no, we must get over it now. You know, so you get these cherry-picked things that are used to actually build up a certain narrative. That being said, it's important to highlight there are a group of Afrikaans South Africans that do not feel the same.
No, of course.
The problem is they're not moneyed or they're not people that have got huge platforms.
I mean, there was the
like
group
that.
of Afrikaners who wrote that open letter to say that not in our name, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if we have to go full circle now, what has happened? CBS had an interview yesterday. And it was a woman from the Free Press that indicated that some of the refugees are really struggling. They are put up in unsafe places. And I was like, moldy places. They don't have enough money. They haven't got the right clothes and things like that. It was never about saving anyone. It was about making a point. It was, yes, the moral high ground. We had the ICJ case. South Africa took Israel to the ICJ. We had the moral high ground there. It was the right thing to do. The only way to gain a little bit of that moral high ground is to say, but you're committing a genocide. And that's why he keeps on repeating genocide, even though...
No.
What case do we have? Genocidal acts.
Right.
So he has to repeat it over and over again for it to stick, although it doesn't take much for anything to stick with his supporters, I must say, if we look at what's going on currently. But yeah, so it was just moral high ground. And now they're there and there is problems for a certain group of them.
What, again, I speak from a position of ignorance. What do they think they're going to find in America? Do they think that they're going to find a similar level of lifestyle, which is pretty high here in South Africa? Do they think that that's what they're going to find in America when they get to the United States? They think they're going to have nice houses and all the trappings of comfort?
I think we need to get to a stage that this is not a huge brain drain. First of all, if I look at the people that have gone, if I look at the people that have been interviewed, for instance, that are there, you're not looking at people that were doing well here. So you're not looking at farmers, for instance, commercial farmers. They're not there. And ironically, the one woman that is over there that said she was this guest house farmer blatantly lied, left her husband over here, said they experienced 4 farm attacks in 2 years in the Free State. I then went to the farm, spoke to her husband, spoke to the other farmers. Never happened. That community relies on each other. They haven't had farm attacks in years. But she needed to sell that particular story. And so you're not looking... So I think what they thought was that it was going to be, you're being prioritized. Not just Afrikaners, they also said minorities. You're being prioritized and it's going to give you a certain treatment. However, they were just political pawns. They have to go into a certain program, the refugee program, and
shame.
Although I have advised, for instance, have a friend whose son said, no, he really wants to go to America. And I said to him, try this thing, man. Guess what? He made it in, him and his girlfriend. And I said, just don't lie. Because if they do, once you start go to the next process, they're going to start checking. Okay, don't lie. Make sure you pay all your debts in South Africa, and go with a clean slate. Just say you don't see a future, and they made it in.
But I can think of many black people that would like to go to America on those bases too.
They're not minorities. Okay, but that's the thing is I have told many people I will not advise it, because at the moment America is very, I feel they're extremely really isolated, and it's scary. Yeah. We have high crime areas. I know for instance, there are certain places that are not safe because of crime levels. But I know that. But I, for instance, was horrified when I saw a woman from Kreersdorp was in church on a Sunday and she was shot in a mass shooting. I was like, no. That's why we are horrified when something like that happens.
Yeah. It's not.
But you could be in a shopping centre.
Sure.
And it wouldn't be a robbery. It will just be a mass shooting or a school.
Our conversation as we close, Bianca, has been amazing. Very, very revealing. Lots of nuance and subtleties that maybe a lot of us are not exposed to. But I've already had a number of conversations with other people from the Afrikaans community in an attempt to try and understand what's going on. Where is this coming from? Clearly, there is a section of the Afrikaner community that feels excluded. Rightly or wrongly, but they feel that. There is the farming community that might also be feeling that same way. My sense is that the future of South Africa requires all of us to be part of it and working together. And that there are real conversations to be had about rural safety, whether it is black people or white people in that space. Those conversations must be had. How do we slow down the juggernaut of misinformation, the momentum of stereotyping in this conversation? How do we say, look, guys, we got to work together? How do we? And my sense is that there is that consciousness. Or do we say that this group of people are unrepentant, irredeemable, and there's nothing we can do about it? Where do we go from here?
Okay, I believe that we need to identify the constructive voices in the areas, because even there are constructive voices in the farming area, for instance. There are organizations that they actually work with everyone. Agri-SA, for instance, is one. They continuously slapped by SAI, for instance. Agri-SA, make their voices heard. Listen to them. If they talk about farm attacks or things like that, listen to them and elevate what they're saying. There are other, PLAS is another one. There are organizations out there that can bring people together. However, they are stifled by moneyed organizations. And like I've mentioned to you, this is all about money. It is not a little bit of ideology, a lot of money. And I believe that if we elevate the right voices, we can have productive conversations. But what we do, because it's exciting, it's outrage farming, there's the grievance addiction, is we elevate the wrong voices. We spend a lot of time fighting against people that will never actually want to contribute to social cohesion because it is not in their ideological or financial interest. Stop elevating those voices. Start elevating the voices that actually believe in a future that includes everyone and that believe that we can work together. That would be my approach.
Do you think that there is room for redemption from fringe groups?
I have not seen it. You see, the problem for me, because I like looking into where this comes from, I have noticed people that thought a certain way 34 years ago think exactly the same way now. And I can't see how that is ever going to change. And I respect that that is how they're going to be. I just don't feel or understand how they will make a contribution in the long run. I think they can be pretty harmful because they also come with the skills from the previous thinking. And that's also another thing is this 94 rainbow nation kind of thing, I think lulled a lot of people into a false sense of security. And where people had assumed, okay, well, there we go, there was no retaliation, let's love everyone. Now we're going to, the moment justice is brought up, the moment, reparations are brought up or anything like that, you would have noticed there's a problem.
Yeah.
If there was true reconciliation in the beginning, do you think if I've harmed you, and I'm not talking as a person, but if I have harmed you and you say this is how you can fix it, this is the things we need to work on, and I keep on fighting those things, and I keep on telling you how unfair it is, and you should just get over the harm I've caused. Was there like a reconciliation thing there?
Somebody said to me that you can't have reconciliation if you've never had conciliation.
I think we just have to get to a stage that we need to move forward, but we must start elevating the right voices and spending our energy on the right things. I mean, I often hear people saying, we should take AfriForum to court and this treason thing and all that. Technically, they're just a tool in a cog in the wheel. So you can take them to court and you can, tell them how terrible they are or whatever. But all you're doing
That'll be platforming them.
You are platforming them, and also you're providing them with a victimhood narrative. You're giving it to them on a platter. Because I have heard members of AfriForum speak to international groups saying, they want to prosecute us for treason now, just because we love our people. Doesn't that sound horrific?
Of course.
They sound like freedom fighters. And we gave them that. We should not be doing that. So that is my issue.
Why do you think that news outlets are apologizing so much to AfriForum?
I'm not sure. You know, I'm a little bit confused by the apologies, because have they said the term white genocide recently? And no. However, I can show you posts where Kali Kriel and Ernst Roots are meeting with some establishment in the United States, and they're saying, we had a conversation about white genocide, you know, or we've met with them. And I'm like, okay, but that's being used there and you're not correcting the narrative. I can show you videos where Ernst Roots is sitting across Tucker Carlson referencing white genocide, and Ernst Roots does not correct him. And there's all these discussions. I can show you Jaco Kleinans indicating that farm murders are directed at white farmers. That was at some Republican get-together. They've got a lot of money to spend, because those things are never what it's about. It's all about the drugs and the sex in the evenings. And I could show you those posts. And then I can also show you the celebrating genocide campaign that was run by AfriForum Youth and AfriForum in 2010. So it's odd for me, the apology. I'm not exactly sure. Maybe they're saying that they said it now. But also, I would like to understand, where's the poetic license there? Is there a cutoff date? Because they said it in 2010, is it not relevant now?
I think that the reason why all of these news outlets are apologizing is in the precision of the language.
Okay.
AfriForum is saying, we are not responsible for the Trump administration's use of the white genocide narrative. That's what AfriForum is saying. They are saying, we are not responsible for that. Mm-hmm. And the rest of South Africa says, but we can see in 2010, that was part of your campaign. But they are arguing, we are not responsible for the American injection of that narrative. And if you think about it, it's true.
Could be.
They are not responsible for America saying that. Mm. And I will go as far as saying, because they have not been speaking to the American administration. How much of the tours that they say they've had to the United States and spoke to certain leaders in the administration do we actually have evidence of?
We have evidence of them doing it in the previous Trump. We do, but very little, because they don't provide that information. They're not very transparent.
Rebecca Davis of the Daily Maverick actually did a very in-depth conversation about that. Mm. That actually questions, who exactly did AfriForum and Solidarity speak to in the Trump administration? And therein is the AfriForum and Solidarity truth. When they say, but we're not responsible for the white genocide narrative in America. Because we've never spoken to anybody about that. So the question then comes, who has been feeding the American establishment, governing establishment, with this white genocide narrative, if it is not AfriForum and Solidarity? And I'm arguing that the South African media space has been fixated on the information that we all collectively have of the fact that you have been speaking about a white genocide, because that information is available.
Yes.
But what they are not guilty of is being the conduit of that narrative. And that is what they fight for. They say, but you show me the connection between us and the Americans saying that. And there actually isn't any connection.
True.
So the question that South Africans need to be asking themselves is, where exactly do the Americans get it from? And my suggestion is that it comes from certain billionaires that have South African roots.
Yes, that is actually not a bad...
Because those are the people that actually have the Trumpian ear.
Yes.
Those are the people that sit around in a dinner table discussion with President Trump and his people. Those are the people that are directly responsible for that narrative. These ones are a convenient scapegoat.
It could be. I must also say is that I think that is maybe a very good, it's probably not a bad idea to actually check our most famous billionaire, our host on that cesspool, is where he started with the genocidal narrative.
I can understand how legally it is possible to argue that, but we're not responsible for the American narrative of the white genocide, because they're not.
Okay, but is that what they're being accused of?
Yes.
That they're responsible for the white genocide narrative?
That is being peddled by America.
Okay, but that's a stretch. I wouldn't... So I'm understanding the apology more now.
So if media outlets are saying AfriForum and Solidarity are responsible for Donald Trump saying that there is a white genocide, factually speaking, they are not. Because they can simply ask, show me where we said that.
Yeah.
And there is no such information because they've never spoken to the Americans at that level. The people that are speaking to the Americans at that level are our former South African billionaires.
Yes.
Those are the people.
The Peter Thiels and the...
Absolutely. And what I'm arguing is that then the Solidarities and the AfriForums become useful idiots, pawns in the greater game played by Trump keeps on calling people lightweights. I would argue that in that particular narrative, he even sees the AfriForums and the Solidarities as lightweights, because he actually listens to the heavyweights, who are the billionaires.
Very good point. And I actually made it when I saw that there was an entire, the billionaires that matter from South Africa, and we're not talking about our more right, we're in the room at that meeting, yes. And they addressed, but, and also when I spoke to Reddy Klabi, she also highlighted, he's got a very small circle. And as much as... And
I don't believe that Carly Creel and Jaco Kleinhans have penetrated that circle.
No. I've also wanted to say is when I look at the type of meetings they attend, I'm like, it's a valid point. But again, it comes down to where we give too much attention to this. Let people pay their donations. I can't say that what AfriForum does, there are good pockets of good work.
Sure.
Okay. People need to understand that not everything is, bad. There is pockets of good work that they do. Allow them to do that for their forky, and don't make don't focus on them all the time, because bashing them is giving them the narrative. But you are spot on. We should maybe do a little bit of a deeper dive and just see where the white genocide narrative started, for instance, with that circle of Trumps.
I think we need so much more of these kinds of conversations, because I don't think that there is a counter conversation to the momentum that the AfriForums are enjoying. And it's bad for this country.
It is.
It really is bad for this country, because what it does is that it produces the other side, the fringe groups on the other side, on the black side, and it gives them fuel. And so ultimately the conversations that matter in this country become fringe conversations.
Yes.
And we need more nuanced, more educated conversations, I think.
But it's noisy conversations, it's emotional conversations, and it's grievance addiction.
Bianca, thank you so much for such an important conversation. And I hope that more South Africans and the globe can have more nuanced conversations about what is going on in South Africa. I think we owe it to our country and to the future to have these kinds of conversations. And so thank you for the research and the work that you do. I know that it's pedantic and some people think it's boring, but I think that it is absolutely essential work. And thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for agreeing to talk to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. I really enjoyed this discussion.
And that is the end of our conversation. And I hope that it helps you understand a little bit more of the hard work that stands before us. And I think that we're equal to the task. Thank you for watching.